Welcome to another episode of Jamming with Jason. Hey, today we're going to talk about fences and Don't Fence Me In. So, Don't Fence Me In was a song written by Cole Porter and Robert Fletcher, actually, in the early part of the 20th century. And we're going to talk a little bit about that song as we go through our episode today. So, with that, here we go. Let's get into today's episode. Okay, so Don't Fence Me In. This is a song that I heard growing up. I've listened to quite a bit. Some of you may be familiar with it. Some of you may not be familiar with it. But it was written by, it started off, I believe, as a poem by Robert Fletcher and Cole Porter, who actually wrote a lot of different show tunes back in the day, needed a song for an upcoming movie. And so he got the rights to the song or to the poem and wrote a song called Don't Fence Me In. And you probably heard it before. I grew up listening to, I remember hearing Bing Crosby sing it. But it's a very interesting song that I think a lot of people can resonate with. Why is that? Well, it seems to be a beloved song that a lot of people know. So I'm going to probably sing a little bit of it to you here if you don't recognize or remember it. Uh, and uh, and the reason I think is because of the message that it gives, and I think that's important as to why we're talking about it today on the podcast. So that's one reason is it's very beloved. How do we know that? Because it shows up, I think, in the top 100 most influential country songs of all time, or something like that. It was also covered by, again, here's a list of just some of the people who covered this song. Um, so you've got people like Roy Rogers, Gene Autry, Willie Nelson, Bing Crosby, Frank Sinatra, Harry Connick Jr., David Byrne, and Ella Fitzgerald, just to name a few. And so that's why today I am sporting my Los Angeles Angels hat. And it's actually the one with the old logo from back in the 60s. And the reason is because Gene Autry, who was an actor and at the time did a lot of cowboy movies, he was the first owner of the Los Angeles Angels when they went into Major League Baseball in 1961. So, little nod out to Gene Autry. Los Angeles Angels are my baseball team. So there we go, right? Little nod to him and to the Angels itself. So it's a song that a lot of people covered. It's been well received by people who listen to it. But the first kind of point that I want to talk about here that's really interesting is Cole Porter, who wrote the song, actually said it was his least favorite of the songs that he wrote. And so here's an interesting lesson for us, right? And so this is very similar to, if you remember, I don't know, a few years ago, I probably talked about the song in the movie White Christmas, which the same thing. Bing Crosby and Irving Berlin didn't really like the song White Christmas, but everybody else did. I mean, it's the top selling single of all time, White Christmas. And so it's similar in this way too. And it's just interesting for us to remember and recognize that, as we're creating things, some of the things that we don't really think are that great, a lot of people may just love. And the things that we think are really great and that we're so proud of, they may not be a commercial hit, and that's okay. Or they might be, right? But I think it's important for those of us who are creators. And in a way, we're all creators. We're all creating our life. We're all creating, what we do, the reality around us. That it's important to remember that sometimes, even when we don't think maybe it's our best work, it's something that is of value to other people. Because again, even though Cole didn't think this was a great song, a lot of people have loved it over the years. A lot of people have covered it, which means that, probably the tune itself, the music, and the words resonate with people. Okay. So I'm going to do my best now to sing a little bit for you if you're not familiar with the song. And again, I haven't practiced this. So here we go, right? It's just raw, but the song kind of goes like this. Oh, give me land, lots of land under starry skies above. Don't fence me in. Let me ride through the wide open country that I love. Don't fence me in. Okay, so that's the first part of it. And so again, I'll try to leave links, in the show notes too, so you can go and watch the professionals actually sing it on on YouTube. But I wanted to give you, again, there's a couple of reasons why I just did that, and one of them that I'll share with you is I just want you to know the song that we're talking about, because again, as you're listening to that, you probably recognize the song, right? And so let's just kind of go through and talk about the lyrics a little bit, and then I want to put it into some context for you, because especially today, a lot of people want to put us in boxes. We have to check certain boxes on government forms around ethnicity and other things like that. People like to label us, but really, all those things are not who we actually are. They may be a part of us, but they don't define us. And the problem is when we allow other people to define us or place labels on us, then we start to become someone who we are not. And so that's why I want to talk about this today. Okay, so some of the lyrics, right? Oh, give me land, lots of land under starry skies above. Don't fence me in. Let me ride through the wide open country that I love. Don't fence me in. Let me be by myself in the evening breeze and listen to the murmur of the cottonwood trees. Send me off forever, but I ask you please, don't fence me in. Just turn me loose, let me straddle my old saddle underneath the western skies. On my cayuse, let me wander over yonder till I see the mountains rise. I want to ride to the ridge where the west commences and gaze at the moon till I lose my senses. And I can't look at hovels and I can't stand fences. Don't fence me in. Right? So it's kind of the gist of it. The song kind of repeats itself, but those are the lyrics. And I love those lyrics. There's if you've been out in nature, there's nothing better than kind of looking up at the starry skies and not being fenced in, of listening, when it's quiet and you hear the breeze blow through the cottonwood trees. There's a beautiful majesty with that. One of the other lines in it, you know, and gaze at the moon till I lose my senses. Beautiful imagery. And, I enjoy doing those things, right? I don't want fences to fence me in. I don't want people that are going to block my view, that don't allow me to look up at the starry sky, that are going to fill my life with so much noise that I can't stop and be in the silence to hear things like the murmur of the cottonwood trees, right? But again, that's me. That's who I am. And so as a result of that, I really resonate with this song. I don't like people to fence me in. I don't like people to place labels on me. In fact, I don't like it so much that I do a lot of different things, right? As some of my friends say, Jason, I don't even know what you do because you do so many different things. Well, it's because I have so many interests in so many different things as well, right? And you may be the same way, right? Because in this world, people want to tell you what's right, what's wrong, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. They place labels on you. But those labels don't define who you are unless you believe those labels. And we get taught so many times, we get told so many times that we often end up believing it. And so I'll use me as an example, right? You can look at me and you can say, Jason, you're a white middle-aged man. And you know what? I guess under the ethnic definitions, I would have to mark myself as Caucasian or white, even though I know that that's not who I am completely, right? There's probably some other things that are in me. In fact, my father has a birthmark that typically only Native Americans have, which means that at some point in my bloodline, I probably had some Native American descendant or ancestors. Okay, but again, if people look at me, they would say, "Well, Jason, you're a white man." Well, I am, and I'm not. Right? People can look at me and say, "Well, you know, Jason, you're a father, you're a son, you're a brother, you're a partner." Right? And yes, I am, but none of those things actually define me per se, right? They're a part of me, but they're not really who I am. They're a characteristic of me. They may be a part of me, but that is not who Jason actually is, right? Because if I start believing and only limiting myself to what people say about me or what they judge about me by looking at me, then my world gets very narrow very quick, right? So again, you know, people could look at me and say, well, Jason, you're a business owner. Yes. You're a podcaster. Yes. You're a CPA. Yes. But I'm so much more than those things as well, right? And those things don't, while they may be things that I do, or maybe part of my education, but they're not really who I am, right? And so a lot of times when people try to do that, or when I explain to people what I do, I have a really hard time explaining what I do, right? In fact, I remember I was just at a conference a few months ago, and I was there with my partner, and she introduced me to one of the other speakers at this conference. And the first thing he said is, "Oh, well, hey, Jason, you know, it's nice to meet you. What are you known for, or what are you famous for?" Kind of an idea. I can't remember the exact words. I think he said, "Well, what are you known for?" Right. And this is a person who is a very big YouTuber. He has, you know, a lot of people who follow him on YouTube. So if I were to ask him that question, he would probably say, well, I'm a YouTuber on this particular topic, right? But that doesn't totally define who he is either. And again, I was just going up and meeting him. I didn't have anything to sell. I wasn't trying to do anything. And so when he asked me that question, I didn't really know how to respond. And I just said, well, I guess I'm a good human being. Because I didn't really know what else to say, right? I mean, I could have said, well, I'm a CPA and I own some businesses and I'm this, I'm that, I'm whatever, right? But that's not really who I am, right? It may be what I'm known for, but those things don't necessarily define me either. And so let's talk about that, right? Because you know, I told you that if we allow these labels, if we believe these labels, if we believe the judgments, then our world starts to narrow. It starts to narrow, right? And so if somebody comes to me and says, "Well, Jason, you're a middle-aged man." Okay, well, there are a lot of things that go along with that label. Middle-aged man, right? Middle-aged man. And there are a lot of kind of judgments, expectations of what a middle-aged man does or doesn't do, what a middle-aged man probably thinks or believes or does not, right? But I don't necessarily define myself that way, right? I don't see myself as middle-aged. I know a lot of people would say that, but I don't feel middle-aged. I don't really act middle aged either, for those of you that know me, and how silly and immature I can be at times. But it's taken me a long time to really start to define that for myself and not just believe what other people tell me. Okay. Now, I want to share with you a little bit about why, if you do that, that can be a potential challenge for you in your life. Okay. And so I'm going to explain that here in just a minute. And again, for those of you that are new, I record these live. So if my throat is tickling and I got to take a little drink, then I take a little drink. So here we go. Early in my career, I went to college at Boise State. I got my accounting degree. I passed my CPA exam, and I went to work for what was at the time the largest and probably most well-respected accounting firm in the world. And it was called Arthur Andersen. And so, at that time, again, I was a young man. I was in my early 20s. And I identified very much as someone working for Arthur Andersen. I was very proud to work there. It took a lot of work for me to be, to do the things I needed to do so that that firm would hire me, right? I had to get good grades. I had to do some internships. I did, some other things along the way to help make sure that I could get the job. And my goal at that time was to become a partner at Arthur Andersen. And so the way accounting firms work, the partners in the firm are actually the owners of the firm. And so that was my plan. I'm going to work really hard. I'm going to make it up to partner. I'm going to grow my partnership stake, and then I'm going to retire as a partner. Because I had seen, one of our family friends was a partner at Anderson before. He had retired. And I thought, you know what, I want to be kind of like him. I like the house he lives in. I think he's a great guy. And so, for me, I was looking at, job opportunities and a career that was something that looked like what I wanted to do. Right now, again, did being a CPA, did working at Arthur Andersen, is that who I was? Well, for a long time, it's kind of who I thought I was. I placed a lot of, there's probably some vanity and some pride that went along with it of thinking, hey, you know what? I work for the largest and most respected accounting firm in the world. There's only I think at the time there were probably 120 or 150,000 of us in the world out of 7 billion people. That's pretty good, right? And so I started placing a lot of my identity of who I was on my job and on my employer. And I didn't really realize how much I was actually doing that until things went sideways with Arthur Andersen. And what do I mean by going sideways? Well, I told you that, they were the largest accounting firm in the world at the time, which meant that they had a lot of large, well-known clients as well. And what started to happen is, anytime that one of the clients goes bankrupt or goes out of business, often people will point back to the accounting firm and say, oh, well, you didn't tell us this was supposed to happen. It's your fault. And so we would get sued and we would have to pay money because people were blaming the accounting firm for the business failure. Now, that's not really the case because the accounting firm doesn't make a business go out of business. But we had money, and so a lot of people would sue and just try to go after the money. Now, we had several large profile customers that had issues in the late 90s. And so, this company happened, that company happened. And again, these things were happening with all of the accounting firms, right? Because when the economy goes down and companies go out of business, those companies have different accountants, right? And so all of the firms were experiencing this. But what happened and what really went sideways is one of our clients was named Enron. And again, that may mean something to you, it may not mean anything to you. But at the time, Enron was the largest bankruptcy in US history. And part of the reason for the bankruptcy and them going out of business was there was some fraud that they were doing. They were lying to the public. They were putting things in their financial statements that were not true, or that were true but were cloudy from an accounting standpoint. Now, much of this information they hid from the auditors as well, right? They were committing fraud to the investors. They were also committing fraud to us as the accounting firm. And they hid it very well, right? But the fact is, when they went out of business, the US government was not very happy. And so there were some different things that happened very quickly to make Arthur Andersen look like they were the ones who were to blame and they were just as guilty as the executives at Enron. And so what started happening is, in the business magazines and other things, Arthur Andersen was vilified as being, this evil kind of company. Now, because I had placed so much of my identity upon working for that particular firm, when I would walk by the newsstand and I would see Arthur Andersen being made fun of in the news, it hurt. It hurt me personally because so much of my identity was wrapped up in my job that when I saw those things, I felt like they were saying it about me personally. I felt like it was a personal attack on me. Now, did I have anything to do with it? Nope. I wasn't on the engagement. None of my clients had any issues, right? But because I had chosen to kind of believe and incorporate some of that into my identity, right, that meant that I started to take things personal. And it's taken me a long time to really kind of distance myself and realize that Jason, the person, is different than Jason, whatever I do to make money, right? But it's taken me a long time to realize that, to understand that, to separate myself from it. But that's what we're talking about today too, right? Is that I allowed myself to get fenced in, to be put into a box. And the result of it was I wasn't maybe necessarily authentic to who I was, didn't really know who I really was. I just thought of myself as Jason the auditor, right? And again, this can happen to any of us in any of these different areas of our life, right? So as an example, I told you I'm a father, right? I have four children from my first marriage. If you count other relationships, you can throw on some adult children after that too. Um, so again, am I a father? Am I not a father? Right? But we'll just go with the, father from the first marriage and four kids, right? Well, after my divorce, I really have not had any contact with three of my children since that divorce. And so, again, for me, if I placed so much of my identity on being a father, and that was the only way for me to prove that I had any worth, then that could be very hard for me to take. And it was hard for me to take for a while, right? To realize that maybe I wasn't the picture perfect dad that certain people would expect me to be, either while I was married or after I was divorced with my children. And so, if you're from the outside looking at my relationship with my children, you might think I'm a bad dad, but I'm being the best dad that I can be under the circumstances, right? And there's a reason for it. And so, again, I can sit and allow people to label me, to say that about me, and I can choose to believe it. And if I choose to believe it, then I'm not going to feel very good about myself. If instead, right, I choose to look at it and say, you know what, I did the best I could, under the situation. I'm doing the best I can under the situation. There's reasons why I'm doing this, and I am consciously choosing to do what I'm doing, and I am okay with that. And my self worth, what I think about myself, who I actually am, actually has nothing to do with the fact that, yes, one of the roles I play in this life, this time, is a father. So, why are we talking about this, right? You're sitting here, you're listening along, and you're thinking, this is all great, Jason, but how does this really apply to me? Well, are you the kind of person that, listens to other people? That maybe, like me, maybe you're putting yourself in boxes. Maybe a part of your identity is tied up in one of these roles that you have, father, mother, sister, brother. I don't know. Is it? Right? Are things maybe not going the way that you expected them to? Um, are you seen as being crazy? Is that affecting you? Right? Because again, you're not able to detach from the identity or maybe change some of your beliefs, right? Because we all have different beliefs. I was taught what it meant to be a good husband and a father from my parents. And, I've been the best husband and father that I can be. It may not be exactly the way my parents taught me, right? And so they may look at it and think that maybe I have or haven't done a good job at either of those things, but it doesn't matter, right? Because their opinion doesn't matter. The only opinion that matters is mine of myself, right? The only opinion that matters about you is your opinion, right? Because again, everybody can come in and can make judgments. Uh, but again, they're making judgments usually without all the facts, right? So, again, are you one of those people that maybe you're feeling that way, right? And maybe it's time for you to start, questioning some of those beliefs. Maybe it's time for you to, start looking at and giving yourself more compassion, more self love, more understanding of realizing, what, it's really hard to be a human. It's really hard to have some of these roles that we have, like, mother, father, sister, brother, son, daughter. Those are not as easy to do as it seems, right? And depending on where you were born, depending on the parents you have, probably depending on the religion that you grew up in, there's probably certain things you were taught about what makes a good husband, what makes a good wife, what makes a good father, what makes a good mother, what makes a good son, what makes a good daughter, right? And the fact is, much of what you've been taught is probably not true, or it may not be true for you. And that's okay. It's okay, right? And I know that sometimes it takes some work. Sometimes it takes a lot of patience with yourself. But what I can tell you is when we listen to the labels, when we do just what we're expected to do based on other people's beliefs, our world gets very narrow and we stop becoming who we really are. And we do the best that we can. We go along, but at some point, there's a breaking point. And I've had several breaking points in my life too, where I just can't do this anymore. And I've had to let go of beliefs. And some of those beliefs were hard to get rid of. And some of those beliefs that I even think I've gotten rid of, they crop up every so often. And I realize I got more work to do, right? But that's part of life. That's part of our journey that we're going through. And it's okay, right? And as I said, sometimes it's harder, sometimes it's easier. And it's really up to us to be able to decide uh, how we're going to go through the change as well, right? And so, again, I hope this has helped you to realize because truly gaze at the moon and really get in touch with who we are, right? Until we really get into who we really are, we're never leading an authentic life because we're playing a part that somebody else wants us to play. But the reality is, you're here on this earth to live your life the way you want to live it. And it's entirely up to you as to what you choose. Now, there's always consequences with choices, right? And so the fact that I chose to be a certain kind of father, well, there's consequences to that, right? I maybe haven't had some things in my life that would have been nice, but you know what? It's what it is. And I've consciously made choices and I consciously accept the consequences of it as well, right? And you can do the same thing, right? Because you can really have the life that you want to have. You can be authentic if you want to be, but you have to know thyself, right? And knowing thyself has been said over and over and over and over and over again, right? One of the main things for us to do in this world is to know ourself. It was one of the codes in Delphi, know thyself. The Greeks used it a lot as well. Know thyself. You hear that over and over again. And that truly is one of life's challenges, but also one of life's liberators. Is once you know yourself, once you truly know yourself, and once you start living according to your true self, you have freedom. There's no fear, right? Because you know exactly who you are and you're okay with it. You become impeccable in what you say and in what you do. And a lot of the things of life just kind of drop by the wayside. A lot of the drama goes away because it doesn't affect you anymore. So this is one of the reasons why, I'm talking about it today. And just to kind of wrap up here, because again, we've gone for our time for this week, but to know yourself is not knowing those pieces about you. Me saying I'm a CPA, I'm a middle-aged man, that is not knowing myself. Those are things about me, but they're not me, right? And so again, as we sit down and take more time to actually realize, who am I, right? And know yourself better, right? That's when things start to open up. It's sitting in the silence, listening to the breeze of the cottonwood trees as we're contemplating, who is Jason, right? I know what I'm doing right now, but who really is Jason? What are the good parts of me? Maybe what are some of the shadow parts of me? Some of the parts that I have to control a little bit, but that are also very valuable parts of me for allowing me to do what I need to do when controlled in the right way, right? And, I can get rid of shame. I can get rid of embarrassment. I can get rid of lots of different things if I know myself and I'm comfortable with who I am. I love who I really am, and I can make my words and my actions match that. And that is really when you start to know yourself and when you really start to align your life, is when your words, when your actions, when they line up with who you really are because you have come to know and love yourself. And as I said, that's ultimately one of the biggest challenges, but also one of our biggest jobs for why we're here on this planet. And so, again, I'm still working the path too. I'm not perfect. I'm still learning how to break down those fences, not fence me in, realize who I actually am. And again, from this episode, I hope that you are one step closer to that because really, when we break down those fences and we are who we are authentically, the world opens up for us at that point. And so, with that, that's my hope and my prayer for you this week, is that you go out and you start to know yourself better, and you start to no longer believe the labels and other things that people are telling you, so you can start to live an authentic and happy life. So, with that, I'm wrapping up for this week, and we'll see you out on the prairie, riding your saddle like a lone cowboy, like I am, because neither one of us are going to get fenced in. And with that, we'll see you on the next episode.